But it's different, like there's just certain.
Okay. Let's bring this meeting to order, please. Township of West Lincoln Administrative Finance Fire Committee agenda for Monday, November the 18th. I am your chair tonight, Mike Rayner. Is there any changes in order of items on the agenda from any members of committee at this time? Seeing none, disclosure of pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest from any members of committee. Seeing none, let's move ahead to appointments. 4.1, item A66-19, Market Janet Doyle, Chair and President of Fundraising Committee, Kristen French Child Advocacy Center, re-update presentation. Welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, councilors, Mr. Mayor, thank you for giving me a few moments of your time. Is that on? Yeah? Okay. Thank you. The Kristen French Child Advocacy Center provides a safe place for children to disclose their abuse experiences to a joint police and facts investigation teams in a child-friendly and welcoming center. The center is only for them. It's not for anybody else. It's for children and youth only. We are the first fully operational child advocacy center in Ontario, and we began in 2008, so we just celebrated 10 years. We represent an international model of excellence in joint investigation for children and youth who have experienced child abuse. And the model has been endorsed as the model of choice for interviewing children by the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police. Our purpose is to respond to the needs of young victims and their families when they first enter the justice system. And we do that by providing this non-threatening, child-friendly place where children and youth feel safe to disclose their abuse experience. This minimizes the number of times children must repeat their experience. Before child advocacy centers, children might have to be interviewed up to 7 times with various professionals. And that just completely continues to re-victimize and re-traumatize children. And so when they come in, there's one interview, there's one recording, and then that recording can be viewed by anybody that needs to see it going forward. It significantly reduces the trauma associated with disclosing abuse, and the systems that are supposed to help children, we don't want them to be contributing to further trauma. We believe if we fulfill our purpose, then we can change the course of a child's life. We work as a team. We put Niagara's children and youth first. That's the model. They're at the center of everything that we do. So our police partners gather evidence and determine if there's criminal charges to be laid. FACS, or Family and Children's Services Niagara, determines child protection needs and assigns special support staff to families during and after investigation to help them navigate through the system. The Family Counseling Center provides follow-up counseling support, and we actually raise funds so that that mental health support can be immediate, and they're not going back into a system of a waiting period, so they can receive immediate support. And partners can call in medical personnel to assess children if needed. We host investigators, we greet families, we direct incoming calls, and we work tirelessly to bring awareness to the impacts of child abuse, sustain the center in the Niagara region, and collaborate with other agencies to provide healing programs and services. This coordination ensures that the developmental needs of Niagara's children and youth are considered first when they are encountering the justice systems meant to support them and not increase trauma. Several larger CACs across the country have had enough volume in cases. Now remember, we're one of the oldest. So now that Alberta and Toronto have been up and running for some time, they've been able to provide both qualitative and quantitative research studies on the return on investment of investigations held at a child advocacy center. And some of what they have found are that children report being less scared. Caregivers are more satisfied with the procedure investigation. You can imagine when a caregiver comes in with their child and they're learning this for the first time and they've come for this investigation. Our job is also to help the whole family, not just the child and youth. And child advocacy centers refer children for both mental health services and preventative and injury-related medical exams more than if they're seeing all these separate people in a siloed model. Of course, there's benefits also for professionals in the community. When working in investigation teams, professionals better understand each other's roles, and that makes a huge difference when the case goes through the system. They work together to improve team results through case review, and fewer children we find fall through the cracks. Finally, we found that there's an estimated savings of 32% when an investigation is held at a child advocacy center rather than in the siloed model from before. That's pretty cost effective for child advocacy centers and speaks for itself in terms of its value. Since opening, we've seen more than 3,000 children and youth who found our safe place to disclose abuse. We have, in 2018, we had 310 cases involving 569 children and youth that were managed in the CAC located facts team. Over our 10 years of operations, those 3,000 children's amounts has amounted to approximately 1 per business day. We've grown from hosting 50 interviews to 340 on average during the year. And children have come from every municipality in the Niagara region for investigation support. In other words, there's not a municipality that hasn't experienced child abuse and its impacts. Why is this important? Well, besides the obvious needs of children who are young and victims in a system largely meant and built for adults, we know that underreporting and undertreated child abuse can affect a person for a lifetime. We know now that a child who suffers abuse is 30% less likely to graduate from high school. A youth who suffers abuse is 26 times more likely to be homeless, and an adult survivor of child abuse is 2 times as likely to be arrested. We know that this has some significant impacts on our social service systems as children grow up and become youth and adults. Our strategic plan includes collaboration on every level. So besides the collaboration of the investigation, which has facts, police, and family counseling center, we've also done outreach to youth through Foster Festival. We have a creative arts program where kids who have been through our investigations can then express themselves further and do some more recovery. And we bring in visiting artists to do creative art expression. Through a Trillium grant, we've been able to reach out to teens 12 to 15 by going into the schools with something called Teen Connect. And that is a video that was created by our partners together, where children do look at different kinds of scenarios, and we ask them, what are you seeing here? So we're trying to make them aware of what they're seeing around themselves, how to identify possible abuse, and how to get help. And we work closely with other agencies to present interagency and community learning. With Victim Services and Niagara Chapter Native Women, we've presented de-escalation training. We've presented resilience and trauma impacts to the brain. We've presented resilience in the Indigenous community and the counseling needs of Indigenous communities. We also began a collaborative website called PCAN, which is Partners to End Child Abuse Niagara. And that's made up of over 14 partner agencies. Basically, it is an online website database for all the programs, speakers, any kind of support you need in terms of child abuse of these 14 partner agencies. So they continually update their own information. And we can provide programs, speakers, and service access information to professionals, caregivers, and the general public. Our funding is, we still have no core funding from the government. So we are working tirelessly all the time to get support from volunteers and staff and partner support. And basically we receive and raise funds from 3 areas. Events, campaigns, and planned giving gives us about 1/3 of our budget. Partner support gives us another 1/3, and grants and foundations gives us another 1/3. So we're pretty much divided up that way, with our greatest support coming from the community. And so we really depend on the Niagara region to help us and support us, and that's been a very generous part of our survival. We raise 40% of our budget through fundraising alone, with 5 events, campaigns for special projects, and planned giving program to sustain the future. Finally, and most importantly, and we finish every presentation with this, is it takes all of us to be vigilant. It takes all of us to know what's going on around us, and we ask that if you know of abuse or suspect a child is being abused, please report it. You do not have to make that decision yourself. If you report it, the professionals will find out if that's the case and take it from there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your presentation. Any members of the committee wish to ask Ms. Doyle any questions? Seeing none, thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for coming tonight. Item A 67-19, Lynn Cunningham, MPAC, re-PowerPoint presentation, understanding impact and our role in the property assessment and taxation system. Ms. Cunningham.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Just get my presentation up here. So thank you. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lynn Cunningham. I am the account manager from MPAC, from the Municipal and Stakeholder Relations Department. MPAC is the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, and I work with all of the municipal stakeholders in the Niagara region and as well. Oh, thank you. Haldeman and Norfolk. I have also with me taking notes my account support coordinator, Kirsten Ewell. The picture that I'll put up here, this is our municipal and stakeholder relations team for the zone. Our people are important, of course, and the fire alarm's gonna go off when I start talking. So these are some of the people behind MPAC's assessment. MPAC staff live in your communities and benefit from your leadership. Our staff are accountable, and accountability guides every interaction that we have at MPAC. Thank you. I just wanted to share some high-level information about who MPAC is and a bit more about how we work together with municipalities to strengthen Ontario communities. So property assessments in Ontario. Ontario's property assessment system revolves around the Ontario property taxpayer and is greatly influenced and shaped by 4 key players in Ontario assessment system. So municipalities, you, who determine the revenue requirements, set the municipal tax rates, and collect property taxes to establish the services your communities need to thrive. The provincial government, who passes the legislation, they're the governing, they govern the business rules around when, how, and how often MPAC assesses property and sets property tax policies. So, for example, they establish property tax classes and certain tax treatments or relief mechanisms and set education tax rates. So within the province, there's also the Assessment Review Board. It's an independent tribunal that is part of the Environment and Lands Tribunals, which is an Ontario cluster which reports to the Ontario Ministry of the Attorney General, and it hears all the assessment appeals from Ontario taxpayers. MPAC, what our role is we establish current value assessments and the classifications for all properties in Ontario in compliance with the Assessment Act and related regulations set out by the Ontario government. So municipalities use our assessed values that we provide to inform your decisions about property taxes. So MPAC is an independent non-for-profit corporation funded by the Ontario municipalities. So the fourth party under the Ontario Property Assessment Taxation System are the property owners. So the property owners receive property assessment notices telling them how MPAC has valued and classified their properties. So we have employees across the province, but our local office is here in Hamilton. But I physically come out to West Lincoln every other Thursday afternoon to actually work with the staff and speak regularly and work through questions. So our property assessment update cycle, so every 4 years, MPAC is legislatively required to update the assessments of every property in the province. So 2016 was the last time we did this, did a province-wide reassessment in Ontario. So every property owner receives a property assessment notice showing the assessed value of their property. And the base date of that was January 1st, 2016. So these assessed values were used by the municipalities to calculate out taxes from 2017 through 2020 taxation years. So looking ahead to 2020, we'll be delivering property assessment notices for the next assessment cycle, which will be in place for the 2021 through 2024 property tax years. So in West Lincoln alone, there's 6,100 properties that will be receiving notices come next year, the middle of next year. So in between assessment updates, though, we don't stop. We're responsible for maintaining our records. So that means we'll update the assessment if there's a physical change on the property or an ownership changes or there's a classification change. So this year alone across the province, we're still sending out 800,000 property assessment notices if there's changes that have happened to a property. So when a reassessment is complete or when a change is complete, the owner will get that assessment and will share the changes with the municipality through the delivery of the roll, which is the second week of December. So January 1st, 2019, this is Ontario's legislated valuation date for the next assessment update in 2020. The valuation date, like I said, is set by the provincial government at a fixed point in time in which current value assessments are based. So this means when MPAC completes the next assessment update, all properties will be valued based on their state and condition as of January 1st, 2019. So property owners will receive that updated notice from MPAC and MPAC in 2020 based on this valuation date for those 2021 through 2024 property taxation years. So this slide is the link between the valuation date and the mailing of the property assessment notices and the phase-in, which brings we now phase the values over those 4 years. So in adding the phase-in, the province introduced a program provincially to provide additional level of tax stability and predictability to people. So when properties experience a market increase, like many will in a reassessment because the market is continuing to go up if we follow the market activity, it will be phased in over the 4 years. So, but if a property value decreases, it's immediate. So it would be immediately starting in 2021, they would realize the decrease. So assessment notice to all your 6,100 property owners will begin in the spring of 2020 and will be staggered until the commercial notices will go out later on in the year. So how does phase-in work? I've provided an example here for you to review. So when a property owner sees their updated assessed value on their property assessment notice as part of the 2020 assessment update, the phase-in information will be included on the notice as well as the key deadline dates for requesting a request for reconsideration. So the January 2019 valuation date simply provides MPAC with a year and a half or so more to review sales and other data to ensure that the assessed values we provide on a property is more transparent. They've moved the date a year in advance. So the sales have already happened, so we have more time to analyze and get it right. So the new assessed value will be, like I said, effective from 2021 through 2024. So in this market example, the increase is 30,000 assessment, which, assuming the property's characteristics stay the same, it would yield a $7,500 assessment increase for each of the separate taxation years. No. Sorry, I clicked off it. How do I get it to go? Maybe I'll scroll down here. So about MPAC, I'll just scroll. It's an enormous undertaking, as you can imagine, a highly diverse assessment base across Ontario. It's extremely complex, so our staff of experts are continually working to ensure our information is accurate and as up to date as possible. So we continue to review those properties ongoing, and we take our role very seriously. We're all taxpayers in the communities that we serve. So one way that we demonstrate how we service our communities is we've created a service level agreement. And the service level agreement is MPAC's commitment to deliver timely, accurate, and measurable products. It defines high performance standards and key service areas and outlines the roles, responsibilities, and dependencies of both MPAC as well as the municipalities. And the service level helps to enhance the relationship between MPAC and the municipalities, creating opportunities for collaboration and improved accountability. So MPAC is an independent, non-for-profit corporation funded by the Ontario municipalities. Our assessments follow the Assessment Act and other legislation regulations set by the Government of Ontario. We have a board of directors made up of provincial, municipal, and taxpayer representatives. Currently, there's 13 members, so 7 of them are municipal, 4 are taxpayer, and 2 provincial. Our board of directors provides governance and organizational oversight similar to you as council. So, as you can see, for 2018, for the 2019 taxation purposes, we delivered assessments totaling 2.78 trillion across the province, and we have over 5 million properties. So these assessments support the collection of nearly 20 billion in municipal taxes and 7 billion in education taxes. That means that every $1 of MPAC's cost supports $100 in municipal property tax revenue. The 2018 assessment roll for Zone 2. So Zone 2 is the Greater Golden Horseshoe, and this is where the bulk of the new assessment is happening. So almost 70% of new assessment across the province was actually added in our area. Now, given the Brampton and Oakville and Niagara Falls have a lot more growth happening, but it's part of the Golden Horseshoe. So there's a lot going on. So for 2019, MPAC added new assessment totaling $31 trillion in assessment. And we measure how soon we pick up new assessment, and we attempt to achieve 85% within 1 year of occupancy, and we've hit that provincially. So for you in West Lincoln, this is keenly what you'd be interested in is your own numbers. So your own assessment numbers, you have 2.27 in current value assessment, 2.27 billion in total current assessment that is reflected on your roll. The bulk of your properties here in West Lincoln are residential properties, so 71% of the properties are residential. With another key component of farm. You have 18% of your properties being farm properties. So I mentioned about the ongoing commitment to picking up new assessment. So as reported as of November 7th, when we closed the roll for this year, we additionally added this 38,718,000 in new assessment for West Lincoln alone. And the bulk of that would be residential. So you've got over 32 million being added residentially. So we're far exceeding the standards of the 85% within 1 year of occupancy, because currently for West Lincoln, we're 94% of picking up your new assessment growth within 1 year of occupancy. So the quality of our data is an integral part of being traceable and transparent. We work to ensure quality assessment data for annual assessment rolls and provide to all Ontario municipalities. And we have ongoing data reviews all the time. So these activities what we'll be reviewing include investigating sales that are occurring, reviewing building permits, completing requests for reconsiderations and appeals ongoing once they're filed by property owners. We also initiate our own reviews. For example, last year there was a review on a number of farm properties. We changed the boundaries of things as changes happen. And we review financial returns for our income valued properties, and we work with planning services on a lot of information that's shared. So how do we assess properties? So current value assessment. What is current value assessment? Current value assessment is the price a property might reasonably be expected to sell for if sold by a willing buyer to a willing seller. by a willing seller to a willing buyer after an appropriate time or exposure in an open market. So current value is simply market value at a point in time, and that point in time is the set valuation date set by the provincial government. So currently it's Jan 1, 2016. We'll be moving it to Jan 1, 2019. In Ontario, there are 3 industry-wide standard approaches to valuing properties. They're known as the direct comparison approach, the income approach, and the cost approach. So the direct comparison approach, it's where we contemplate the comparison of a subject property to similar properties that have sold. So recent sales of comparable properties are analyzed to provide an indication of value for properties assessed through this approach. And in considering any sales evidence, it's critical to ensure that the property sold has similar or identical use to the property being valued. So we use this approach for valuing single-family homes, for condos, for vacant land. The income approach, it contemplates the ability to earn revenue, and it's tied to real estate, not the business. So that may be run from that location. So in other words, it's not the revenue being generated for, say, like a Walmart. It's rather the income by way of rent that the landlord is able to generate through the ability to lease a particular Walmart. So this example requires us to do a detailed analysis of income and expenses, both for the property being valued and for similar properties to determine how much income can be expected to generate in the open market. So this type of approach would be used for, say, industrial malls or medical dental buildings or shopping centers, those types of things. And the final approach is the cost approach. It's used when a property type is unique and rarely sold in the market. So we can't rely on the sales or the income. So we would value by estimating or adding the value of the land to the current cost of reproducing or replacing buildings or structures other than and other taxable components. So once this has been established, we would make a deduction to account for depreciation or functional obsolescence and see how that would affect how much a buyer would be willing to pay for a property. So the market value of land is then added to the replacement cost of the building to determine the current value. So this type of approach would be used for industrial properties or grain elevators or warehousing, gravel pits, those types of properties. This is causing me brain rave. So valuing residential properties. Residential properties include those in a small or large urban area as well as rural waterfront areas. So how many residential properties are there in Ontario? Over 5 million. So while there are over 200 factors that affect or we consider when we assess a property, the 5 factors that are majorly account for 85% of your home value are age of the property, adjusted for any kind of renovations or addition, the living area, so the square footage of the property, the structure, the location itself, because we're not going to compare to properties in other areas. We're just comparing properties within your immediate location, the lot dimensions of your actual lot, and the quality of construction that goes into the home itself. And some other of the key features that may affect value are other structures on the property, secondary structures, site features such as if a property is abutting a golf course, or if it is on the water, or and other structural features such as if a property has a fireplace or if it has a finished basement. Those types of things are added to our detailed documentation that we have on each and every property. So valuing residential properties as well as farm properties. So accurate farmland values in Ontario are determined by extensive analysis using only the sales of farmland to farmer sales as legislated by Section 19.5 of the Assessment Act. So farm values are based on the land's capability and other factors such as climate and location. So it's important to note that the assessment of farms are based on the current use as a farm, not as the potential use as a future development. So regardless of the valuation approach, our work is ongoing. We need to keep our assessments current. We conduct regular reviews, both at the individual property level, at the sector level, and we analyze information ongoing. We proactively at MPAC also evaluate changes in market conditions and economic trends to determine if there's any potential impact to the valuation. This work is important as we're responsible for providing that updated roll annually, and if there's any changes to a person's property, we're continuing to make those changes. So we've had numerous touch points with the sector to demonstrate the values we place on the assessment rule. And we go out to a number of conferences to deliver our message and to provide information and talk about market trends. At AMO, we talked about and hosted a session on cannabis, and now we've hosted a webinar where that information was recorded and is available if you're interested in listening to that if you didn't attend that session. We also offered a focus group to inform engagement strategies around the 2020 assessment and what we want to do or what we're strategizing to prepare to get that message out to your homeowners. We hosted other sessions at various other conferences where we're sharing that same message and message of our strategy. And we're going to continue monthly to host more webinars to build and strengthen our relationships with you, the stakeholder, to just keep that dialogue flowing. So in support of the 2020 assessment update, we've been, like I said, working on our engagement strategy, hosting these information sessions. We'll be working on, we have an engagement session with the small business SPABAR properties, our special purpose business properties in Mississauga, where we're meeting with the owners and representatives from those large commercial sector properties, just to engage with them and keep that focus and keep the conversations flowing as we vamp up into this reassessment. It's part of our commitment to share the information that we have, to reach out and strengthen what we know. We're committed to our service level agreement. We're committed through sharing information through our source, which is Municipal Connect, to meeting the standards that are set and allowing you to share and receive information regularly. As far as the tools that we want to have available and in the ready for property owners coming into the reassessment, we have the aboutmyproperty.ca website for property owners where they can look up properties in their neighborhood. It's for both residential and commercial properties. It's secure. It's a self-service application where property owners can access their own information. So if you as elected officials encounter property owners with questions, you can direct them to aboutmyproperty.ca where they can look around at their neighbors' properties, look around at their own property information, verify that it's accurate. If they're not satisfied with the information, or if there's something wrong and they want to take the step forward and file a request for reconsideration, they can do that directly through the website. There's lots of guidance through it, and we're continually working to enhance through the notice, a simple way to access, a simple way to get to the information. So as we sharpen our focus on delivering a successful assessment update, our commitment does not change. We understand how important it is to get these assessments to you accurately. We're committed to keeping you informed on the progress, and hopefully I can come back before the notice delivery just to share the market trends of what's actually happening within your market area, just so that you know what's coming, know what to expect, know what people should be expecting. We are listening. We want to keep you informed. We want to provide you with a suite of tools that you can share with your constituents. We're committed to collaborating you where we need to, and our part in property assessment is that we take it very seriously. We're out here, we're listening, and we're remaining committed to meeting the needs that you have. So hopefully, I know it's a lot of information. I know it gets detailed, it gets factual. But what I've hopefully shared for you today has provided some high-level understanding, what's coming, what will be coming. There will be a lot of volume with calls when people see their notices, but they should be expecting those notices next year, and we need to get ahead of that message because it will be a busy year. It always is every 4 years. It's never as smooth as it gets. Every time we do this every 4 years, there's always change. It's a redistribution of all of the assessments, so people need to focus on their notice and really look at it. We've tried to make it simple, make it easily understood, make them understand what they're looking at, so have it be clear, but it's coming. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your presentation. Any members of the committee have questions with regards to this? Councilor Trombetta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Cunningham. It's very informative. In your slide 19, you mentioned what properties, what surrounding a property makes it go up. And then you touched a bit on the cannabis aspect of it. What entitles a property to go down in assessment? I always hear about properties going up. And the major question, which everybody probably in this room is wondering, what makes the assessment ever go down in someone's favor with, something that's near it or what? We've been, obviously in this community, we have multiple things that are getting put in our rural areas, but we never see the assessment really going down. We always see it going up. So what triggers it going down?
So through the chairman, Councillor Rayner, back out to you. There's a number of contributing factors. So if someone in a situation was to file a request for reconsideration seeking a decrease in assessment, sometimes that happens for a number of reasons. It can be that there is factual information that has changed on a property over the course of time. Typically what happens is when it does go down, it's usually as a result of something structural that's gone away. You took away a pool, you removed a garage, you're going to see a decrease in value because you would expect that those components that are on the property physically are worth something, or they're part of that overall equation, where if you take them away, you're going to get a decrease. There are external factors as well that influence property values that we have to analyze in the market. So you mentioned cannabis being something, and cannabis is new to us, new to the industry. So we're working at inspecting those properties and getting the detailed components for the cannabis facilities, but how they influence the market or the resaleability of a property there has to be an analysis undertaken, and the sales evidence has to support that there's a nuisance as a result of them. And to date, there's been a couple of assessment review board hearings and no evidence to support an adjustment because of a nuisance. Whereas people might believe that there is a nuisance, there hasn't been any market evidence yet, but it's fairly new. So in the future, we continue to write papers to support, like we wrote a number of papers when the wind turbines came, and they're posted on our mpact.ca website, but the same will happen with cannabis. We'll be studying the impact to the market areas and the impact of the properties surrounding them.
Great. Thank you for that information. Thank you.
Any further questions from members? I have a few, if you don't mind. How do I start this? Your presentation with regards to the $30,000 increase over the 4 years, dividing it by 4, if most of the taxpayers only seen that, you would never hear from them. The concern is that the real estate market has gone crazy in the last 3 years, and a $300,000 piece of property in 2016 is a $500,000 piece of property today. Reflecting on that, if the assessment goes up accordingly, that's a $200,000 increase over 4 years, which is a $50,000 a year increase. Now, I'm trying to put this into perspective. Knocking on doors during election time, we had a massive tax increase of 15.2% to build this new MERS. People were saying that they're concerned that they would not be able to afford it. Specifically the people who are old, retired, that have lived in their home for 40 years. And they're saying, I might have to sell because I can't afford to keep it. Now they're going to get hit after we've had the 3 installments staying in the base of 15.2% for the next 27 years. We've now got this coming, which could be another massive tax blow because, simply put, assessment times mill rate equals your taxes. So if your assessment goes up significantly, then the odds are your taxes are probably going to go up significantly. Or for those people who are on fixed budgets and retired that only have CPP and old age, they don't get 10, 15, and 20% increases every year by the government to offset the 15 or 20% increases in their property taxes. This is a very devastating thing that can occur with NPAC, and I do get calls, especially in the early part, and I have a phone number where I refer them to the Hamilton office. It used to be the office on St. Paul Street
That's
in
correct.
St. Catharines on the 3rd floor. That was not even identified. You had to know it was on the 3rd floor. And I went up one day, and it was empty. And they said, oh, they moved to Hamilton. But anyways, there's a lot of concern on that because that really affects a lot of people. You're taking what they have left of their disposable income to the point where they cannot keep their properties. And I'm serious. I had a number of people knocking on the doors that were in their 70s and stuff saying, I don't know if I can afford to stay here much longer if it goes up. This is usually that's why they spread it over 4 years, because it's a very hard hit. But this is the worst as far as impact's going to be in the history that I know impact, because no property values have increased as dramatically as they have in the last 3 years. And if impact reflects that on people who have lived in their property for 40 years, that dollar value that you say it's worth now, $500,000, is only worth it if they sell it. If they've lived there all their life and now they're paying as if they just bought the property, there's a huge difference between the two. And now you're basically forcing them out of their home because they can no longer afford to live there. What can be done about that? So that I understand the system, but the system is very hard on people with a fixed income.
So I'll address a little bit. I think Donna would like to speak a little bit about it as well. Mr. Chair, I appreciate your questions and I appreciate your position. What I'm providing out is information about what MPAC's role is and what MPAC does and how we are legislated to analyze the market, and we're legislated to reflect those current values assessments based on what the market is indicating over 4 years. What we assess is the property, not the person. The property is what we place an assessed value on, based on, yes, what it would sell for in an open market and what the market evidence is indicating. We do this every 4 years. It's not, it's a revenue neutral situation. We're just redistributing or coming up with values. The taxation aspect, like I stated in the first or the second slide, that's the purview of the municipality, how that part of the equation is. But our purview is, and what people have to consider is their current value assessment what they would expect to sell their property for? What is their information accurate and correct? Like, if they do their homework and talk to real estate or look up their property comparables, are they reasonable? Is there an expectation that there's something amok? And if that's the case, then they're to contact us, go through the request for reconsideration process, and we'll talk them through it, and we'll ensure that their assessment reflects the current value that is expected. We'll have that discussion or that dialogue with them. I think Donna wants to speak further about the taxation aspect.
No, she doesn't want to. Oh.
It's a complicated situation, assessment and taxes, and a lot of people get confused. The most important thing to remember is the amount of taxes we collect is based on the budget that council passes. So impact can do, they value properties, but the tax rate is linked to the assessment, the amount of revenue we need to collect from our taxpayers. So if residential homes increase by 30%, let's say they all increase by 30%, and council, decides in their budget that we don't have to collect any more money from our taxpayers. We're good, 0% increase. Even though those assessments went up, they're not going to be paying more tax.
Because the mill rate will
They're
go
not
down.
levying more money, right?
Yeah.
So, and as the assessment goes up, the tax rate actually goes down. So I think as counselors, what you have to always remind your ratepayers is that don't panic when you see that assessment notice. If it's going up 30%, but all residential is going up 30%, you will be fine. I think what happened with the last reassessment in West Lincoln, we did see a large increase in farms. Something we had never seen before, I think it was all over Ontario. So there was a big shift to farm, and I think that perhaps for some people caused a little bit of stress. But then again, farming is a business, so I think most of them know how to manage that. So I think that's the message. Just because you get an assessment and it's increased, don't panic.
It's just that MPAC increases to be anticipated based on the economy in the last few years is probably going to be very large, and it's going to cause a lot of, I know Ms. DePolifis says don't worry about it, but the average person does not understand the whole system and how it works. All they're seeing is they've got a house that they bought for $200,000 5 years ago, and now MPAC says it's worth $600,000 4 years later, and all of a sudden I've got a $100,000 increase in my assessed value for the next 4 years, and this is crazy. This causes a lot of stress, and I know what you're saying. It deals with the property, not with the person. So something that somebody has valued for 40 or 50 years of their life and lived there, MPAC is being impersonal about it, and if the property taxes do go up substantially to the point that it may be forcing them out of something. So there is obviously going to create a lot of negative response because most properties go up, they don't go down. The other thing I'd like to ask you, if somebody buys a piece of property and spends a lot of money fixing it and makes it look really nice because it was a dump when they bought it, they will chance to have an increase in assessment and pay more taxes, correct?
Well,
So the basic premise is what I'm saying is, if the person wants to make their property better and spend the money, MPAC will penalize them as compared to somebody who doesn't care and the barn's falling down and the house is run down and their assessed value won't go up because who wants to buy it? But somebody who takes it to make it better is penalized. So the system negatively affects what you want to do, which is to have people want to look after their properties and want to make it better. But if they do, they're going to be penalized for doing it. Am I correct on that, or is that not true?
back to you. The value of a person's property is based on what you would expect to be able to sell that property for. So if improvements are made vis-a-vis a building permit is taken out and an addition is added to a house, you would expect that the value of that property would be worth more because you can sell it for more. So we're doing sales analysis.
You're doing it on the impersonal way. I'm doing it on the personal way, that somebody looks after the place and beautifies it and gets penalized. Is there ever going to be a system where somebody who doesn't, and we have them out in the country where the properties are terrible and they're falling down, actually would get penalized as an incentive to clean it up? You know what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying that we're legislated and this is our role and responsibility to make the assessments as accurate and reflective as possible. So we're trying to get all of the information correct. I understand what you're saying. It's not that we're not taking it personally, because we live in the communities that we serve. We are part of the communities. We pay taxes as well. So whatever is happening in the market is happening to everyone. Like this is how the system has been set up to be. It's based on value. It's not based on a person. And if a person makes an improvement to a property, then we reflect it accordingly.
Yeah. So, any further questions from anybody else? Seeing none, thank you very much
Thank
for your
you.
presentation. Okay, a request to address items on the agenda. Anybody in the audience wish to make any comments with regards to the agenda tonight? Seeing none, thank you. Consent agenda items. All items listed below are considered to be routine and non-controversial and can be approved by one resolution. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests it, in which case the item will be removed from the consent resolution and considered immediately following adoption of the remaining consent agenda items. Item A68-19. I will read the following items. 1, West Lincoln Age-Friendly Advisory Committee, WLAFAC, minutes of October 4th, 2019. Number 2, Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee, minutes of October the 10th, 2019. Information Report, WLFD-16-19, monthly update, October 2019. Information Report, RFI-T-26-19, October the 2019 Budget Status Report. Information Report, RFI-T-27-19, West Lincoln Community Center Borrowing Update. And number 6, Recommendation Report, number RFD-C-10-19, Renewal of Consultant Agreement with the Harrington Group Limited and continued participation in Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee. We have a mover and seconder on this, please. Councillor Mayor and Councillor Riley. Anybody wish to pull any items on these? Mr. Mayor?
I'd like to pull 5, thanks.
Number 5, anybody else? Okay, seeing none, item 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. Any further questions regarding that? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is carried. Item number 5, information report number RFI-T-27-19, West Lincoln Community Center Borrowing Update. Mr. Mayor, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Just a quick question, and I understand it's just an update about things that are soon to be transpiring. I'm just want to know, my concern is surrounding the term, the length of term of the balance of the borrowing. So my understanding in broad terms is we've taken out a loan for 30 years for about $15 million. There's about $5 million that are left to be borrowed to complete the project. I've always had a strong objection to 30-year mortgages, and I guess at this point my comment would be to hopefully we can negotiate that at a shorter term. I understand there'll be bigger principal but the challenge that I've experienced is those infrastructure loans are locked in for the 30 years. So if we were ever to come into a windfall, we couldn't apply it to that debt, but it's locked in for the 30 years. And I have kind of a personal challenge with those kinds of loans, and I understand there's great interest rate and all those things. So if we're going to go through the negotiation of the remaining $5 million, more or less, I'd like to make sure we negotiate that at a shorter term. And there's reasons for that, but I don't want to get into it at this time. So,
How do you wish this to proceed at this time?
well, this is just an update, but it's on the radar. So I understand that when the final when the final analysis is done, we will be going into this in a little bit more detail. So I just wanted to get my comments on there at this time. So that's all.
All right, Mr. Mayor, you obviously moved this to be brought up. I need a seconder on this one, please. You second this, Councillor Yonker?
Yeah.
And then you have a comment?
I have a question.
Okay, you're next. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess what I was gonna ask is when we, when you borrow money, right, you also, I guess the question I wanted to ask is, do we have the option of paying back earlier? Or is this a 30-year locked, no, and I think that's what the mayor was asking as well, through you, Mr. Chair, to Don.
Steve Philippus.
Through you, Chairman Rayner, I'll address both points at this opportunity. I want to clarify that the actual borrowing resolution that went to Infrastructure Ontario goes through Regional Council of Niagara was for the initial 20 million, and it was at 30 years. I'd have to investigate if this remaining 4 million could be borrowed at a different term. The other thing that council has to take into mind is that our payback plan is based on a 30-year debenture. If the remaining amount were to be changed to a 10-year payment plan or a 20-year payment plan, that would mean that the annual payments would increase, and that would mean that we'd have to find another revenue source to pay off those higher rates. So there's those two things to consider. If we were to receive a windfall, we cannot pay off the debenture like you perhaps can a mortgage. We're committed to paying it over the 30 years.
Okay, any further questions? Any further questions? Councilor Riley?
Since we're talking about this, the way how I see that, and I understand what the mayor's saying. It's, you know, I kind of have the same mindset. Don't like the idea of carrying debt of any capacity personally. But I think we have to be mindful if we proceed forward to reduce that. That's only going to increase the tax rate. That's only going to put residential tax up much higher. I don't know. We're not looking at trying to knock off a few $1,000s. My guess, if we're trying to pay this down, we're not trying to save a year. We're probably trying to knock off 5 years. And so that tax implication that's going to happen to the community is going to be astronomical. And for one, if this is something that we're going to have to pay regardless, we pay the full amount over 30 years, or we're paying more within less, I don't really see the advantage personally right now. So I hope to be enlightened over the next little while as far as what the mayor had kind of had in mind, how that's going to benefit our community right now, but I don't see it personally. So anyways, I just want to make that noted for the record.
Thank you. Councilor Trombetta?
Mr. Chair, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mrs. DeFilippe, is that development charge, how much is that development charge based on? Like, how many years is that? Is that just the term, or?
Through you, Councillor Rayner, that chart on page, I guess, page 2 of the report.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
That represents cash, so that's the amount of cash we've had in DCs to fund the project. In the ongoing budgets, every year, we're going to have some DC revenue that we will be using to pay off the debt.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, Mr. Mayor.
So maybe I'd like to just disclose what my vision is, so that we're all on the same page. At least you know where I'm coming from. The reason that I would like to negotiate a shorter term for the remaining $5 million or $4, whatever that is. It's about a quarter of what we were going to loan. I understand about the 30, and I get it, and it's locked in, and those were in my opening comments. But I think it would be prudent. One of the challenges we had with the former arena was there was never really a plan put in place for its maintenance and for its ongoing upkeep, especially in some of those larger ticket items like an arena floor or a roof system or the power plant. It was always. It didn't have, in that sense, in my opinion, a proper reserve fund connected to that large ticket piece of infrastructure for our municipality. This new West Lincoln Community Centre is an even larger asset for our municipality, and I think we've just built it. It's brand new, but it's not going to last forever. And we have to anticipate that at the 30 and 40-year mark, there's going to be some major expenditures by way of a floor or a roof system. And I think it would be wise for us to have a component of the debt paid off. And if we did that at kind of the 20-year mark of its age, and then flipped, and I understand it's gonna be a little bit aggressive, but this is where some forward thinking, I think, would come into play, where I think we have a specific reserve fund, and this is something we would have a vision for, you know, at that 20-year mark, that we take that money that now is quote unquote freed up because that $5 million debt was is now paid off and retired. We could take that next 10 years and put it toward a like a reserve fund, so that at the 40-year mark, when the floor needs to be done or a roof system needs to be done, we may have several $1 million. And this is where, you know, the number crunchers would be able to determine what the appropriate reserve fund for an asset of that size would be. But we could have that in place. So that's my vision. Just this spitball in there, just throwing it out there. But I think it would if we have this building for 30 years, we pay it all off, and we have made no specific allotment or reserve fund for that building, I fear that what's going to happen is at the 45-year mark, the thing's going to be collapsing. We're not going to have any desire to fix it up, and we'll be going through this all again. Whereas I see a longer-term investment of this property, I anticipate that my great-grandchildren will be able to skate there at some point. I think it's a beautiful building.
That's 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Through you, Chairman Rayner. Mayor Bilsma, you are an advocate of asset management. Thank you.
I always have, you know that.
Yes, because that's exactly what asset management tells us to do. As I mentioned, my concern is that the plan is based on the 30-year, and we've increased taxes appropriately to cover that. What I would recommend is this project is going to be under budget, and we will not need to debenture as much of the funds as we had to. I would like to come back with a report that discusses the savings and how we can apply that to a reserve and contribute to it annually to achieve the same goal, rather than change our financing plan, incur, higher levy. So I think we can meet the goal and still stick to the plan.
Music to my ears. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Yonker, then I'll go to Councillor Boyd.
Well, and just to follow up on that too, the reason why I wanted to ask if this was an open mortgage is because if we have a surplus in 1 year of $250,000, if we could put that towards that loan, that's a pretty good chunk to pay off. And you can see in there that there's, in the past, we've put it towards reserves or into lessening the tax burden in future years or something. So it was just, that's what I was asking is if we have a surplus of $250,000, do we have the option of paying down that mortgage? And I guess we don't, right? Is what I've understood. So that's why I had asked, not to say, hey, we can pay it down quicker by raising taxes. No, to save taxes.
Okay, Councillor Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with that, and I understand that. Through you, Mr. Chair, and I'm not too sure who to go to. Maybe I'll go to the CAO. What is the life expectancy of the West Lincoln Community Center?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Rayner to Councillor Riley. That would be determined through the asset management plan. I don't know the answer specifically, and I'm not going to state it, but that there was these facilities are made to last a very long time, and the mayor is correct in that you have to figure out a plan to make sure that the asset is protected and plan for it. So there'll be other things that the council and the community will be building in the next while, not necessarily in the next little while, but certainly over those 30 years, and you constantly have to be making plans to take care of our assets. That's you are the stewards of all these facilities, and that's your job to make those plans.
Okay, no, and that's great to hear, just because, as the mayor's explaining, the side of it sounds like in 30, 35 years, the thing's going to be falling to pieces. And obviously, I know he's just explaining, planning ahead at the same time. That's not the impression I had of this facility. It's supposed to be state-of-the-art. I'm hoping that we get twice the life expectancy out of it, not 30, but I don't think it's a bad idea to plan ahead if we had the ability to do so. It's just a matter of planning smart to achieve that planning ahead, so.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Ganam, have you got a question? I missed again? You must sit too far back, your hands are too short.
You were back. Anyway, it's okay. All I was going to say is that the old arena, the problem that we ended up in with that is the very fact that there was not an asset management plan. There was not enough money put aside to look after repairs as it went along. And each time something came up, it was another, how are we going to find that money to fix that floor or to fix that wall or to fix the separation of the hall from the arena property? So it's been an ongoing thing. So I think going forward, the asset management aspect of that is what's going to protect us from ever being in that position again. Thank you.
Through to Ms. DeFilippis, there apparently was a grant money that's coming available to the tune of like 15 million or something. Is there any possibility that any of that could apply to a retroactive project in the recent year or two, that maybe we could kind of get in on a kind of, you were close and therefore we'll give you a little bit of it?
To Councillor Rayner, I believe at last month's Public Works meeting, the Director of Public Works presented what we planned on using the grant application for, and at that point, it was noted that the project has to start, I believe, after the application's put in, so there's no retroactivity whatsoever.
There's no leeway at all? Okay. Any further questions on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that finishes that one off. Communications, A69-19, Brenda Mitchell, application to sit as the Township of West Lincoln's representative on the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee. Recommendation that the correspondence from Brenda Mitchell, former JAAC member, dated October the 8th, 2019, requesting to return as the Township representative on the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee, JAAC, be received and... Mr. Mayor?
I'll move it.
You support it?
Yeah.
And you want to move it? All right. And do I have a seconder?
But it's still just with the and, so I'm not sure. I was hoping to receive some information about I support it, and I just wanted to see if there was traction. I don't know her former role, so.
Do I have a seconder for this? Councilor Riley? Anybody wish to comment with regards to this? Mr. Mayor?
I just want to ask the question, is there a vacancy?
Ms. Shimmy?
Through you, Chair Rayner, to Mayor Balsma. Yes, there was a vacancy when Mr. Nicholas Bowden resigned a couple months ago.
Okay. Then I'll continue and I'll propose the amendment. And I would, do I go about by saying and support it, or do I just say, so I'm looking to the clerk here, and I nominate Brenda Mitchell to fill that vacancy?
No, just say support, right?
Through you, Chair Rayner, to Mayor Balsma. Yes, if you want to support it and the seconder is willing to support that, we could just add the word support it.
Okay, so that's what I'm what I'm proposing if the seconder is willing.
Okay, so you support, I need a seconder, and then we already have the Councilor Riley. All right, any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of this? That carries. Staff reports, there are no staff reports. Other business, item A70-19, the CAO Employee Professional Accomplishments.
Thank you. Once again, I get to talk about an accomplishment of one of our staff. Elsa Curry, our deputy clerk, has completed level 1 of the AMC2 Municipal Clerks Institute. So a great step in her learning to become a future clerk. And that means nothing is intended with respect to that comment. But certainly, we always expect that our staff will do the appropriate training that they need to learn the skills.
There you go. You have one further thing you'd like to add?
Thank you. I'll call this 9.3 if you're okay with that. On your desk in front of you tonight is the package that is the background information for the Phase 2 Council Staff Strategic Plan exercise, which is on Wednesday. And it's a special council meeting. It's at the West Lincoln Community Center in the library program room, as it was last time. Before you is, you're going to read all the feedback that we received from the email comments, the website comments, and the cards that were collected through the community consultation. So it's a very thorough feedback from our community engagement exercise. Also, you're going to get the feedback from the business consultation exercise, the staff engagement, or the staff exercises as well, and all of that is to be background information as we get together and narrow down and define the priorities that you want to include in the strategic plan. So it's going to be quite an involved exercise. There's a lot of things that we want to do, but we can only do so much. So it's going to be quite the event in getting through all this material. I also want to note that there is an exercise to review the mission, vision, and values of the organization as well. And I think that's in the first or the second part. So basically our consultant will be walking everybody through the work that we've done to date, and then take us through some really specific facilitated points to bring us to that list that will be presented as our final strategic plan on December 16th council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Items A71-19, members of council. Anybody, members of council, have any comments they want to say? None at this time. There's any new business for anybody wants to bring up? Councilor Riley, you always have something. Nothing this time?
Nothing today. Okay.
Confidential, there is none, so this meeting now adjourns at 7:47. Thank you. Conference done.